Don't buy Sam Pellegrino, everyone. It's owned by Nestle. Just found that out. It broke my heart a little bit. Good morning. Good morning, and welcome back to the Morning Bible. I was just picking up my Bible. It's wonderful to have you. It's not really the morning here, but that's okay because I went out and got a dog. It's been a very eventful day. I've learned a lot about Nestle, I've learned a lot about dogs. But more importantly, I've learned a little bit about Jesus. And so we're going to be jumping into the start of chapter 14 today. Brand new chapter, very exciting. It's sort of a nice little conclusive little passage that we've got today. So let's have a look at it. Chapter 14 from verse 1. One Sabbath, when he went to dine at the house of a ruler of the Pharisees, they were watching him carefully. And behold, there was a man before him who had dropsy. And Jesus responded to the lawyers and the Pharisees, saying, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" And they remained silent. Then he took him, Jesus took the man who had dropsy, and healed him and sent him away. And he said to them, "Which of you, having a son or an ox that has fallen into a well on a Sabbath day, will not immediately pull him out?" And they could not reply to these things. So, another Sabbath passage. Well, this is actually, if you've been paying a lot of attention, you'll notice this is the third Sabbath passage we've got, and it's the final one. The Bible works like that quite a lot of the times, like quite a lot of numbers are significant, and 3 is especially significant in the life of Jesus. You'll see with the sort of 3 days of him dying to his resurrection, a lot of his ministry and a lot of the things he does are shaped around the number 3. And this idea of doing things in threes to sort of give you a different look at it on each day, and the last one be kind of the conclusive thing. And so this is the third and final one of Jesus healing on the Sabbath. We talked about the Sabbath quite a lot. It's the Jewish day of rest, where they put it into law that you must have a rest day. This was in God's original commandments that he gave to Moses. It was there in Genesis, right at the beginning of the Bible. But it's something that the religious leaders, the Pharisees, have taken from Jewish scriptures, and they've added in loads of extra rules to it and made it this very authoritarian kind of obsessive thing where it's all about adhering to all these tiny little rules, but they've actually lost the heart of what the Sabbath is about. And in following these rules, they're actually behaving in quite an immoral way a lot of the time, which is something that we see in the previous 2 passages where they criticize Jesus for healing on the Sabbath. Jesus will be in the temple, someone will come to him, they say, can I have some healing? And Jesus will heal that person. The Pharisees will come to him or criticize him for it, and Jesus will argue back. And so this passage is different in a key way because the Pharisees say nothing. So let's have a look at it and see what it's all about. So one Sabbath, when he went to dine at the house of a ruler of the Pharisees, they were watching him carefully. So the Pharisees wanted Jesus dead. They really didn't like him. He was going around and basically making them look like fools and calling them out on all of the corruption that they've been putting in place for all this time. But Jesus still goes around for dinner on one of their houses, which is really cool. These guys are desperate to catch him out, and so they're wanting to spend time with Jesus, and Jesus is like, yeah, sure, go for it. I'll gladly come and spend time with you, because it means he has an opportunity to call them out and to expose their problems to other people and teach other people through showing them what not to do with the Pharisees. And behold, there was a man before him who had dropsy. So I didn't know what dropsy is. My notes say it's also known as edema or edema. I don't know which one is. So I looked up edema, and it's basically a little bit gross. I've got it, the Wikipedia page open on my laptop over there right now. You get fluid in parts of your body. Basically, you get a big swelling where loads of fluid builds up, usually in your arms or legs, and your skin becomes very tight and a bit, yeah, like it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. It's quite painful. Can lead to joint problems, muscle problems, all the rest of it. And so a man came to Jesus with dropsy. It's quite rare that we get the actual condition named in the Bible. I don't know if this is the original, what was in the original translation, or if this is kind of what they've tacked on since. But I trust the ESV pretty well to translate things accurately. But yeah, not super relevant. That's just what this guy was suffering with. And Jesus responded to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But they remained silent. So normally, Jesus would just go and heal straight away, and then the Pharisees would criticize him. But Jesus is sort of, I guess he's kind of stood there and he's like, well, Pharisees, what are you saying? Is this allowed or is this not allowed? And none of them say anything. They haven't got any answer for him. And so Jesus took him and healed him and sent him away. And he said to them, which of you, having a son or an ox that has fallen into a well on a Sabbath day, will not immediately pull him out? And they could not reply to these things. So obviously, your son is super valuable to you. Your ox is also super valuable to you. Your ox is very strong, very crucial piece of, I guess, both farming equipment and livestock for these people. You'd sacrifice oxes sometimes, but they're really big, really powerful, sort of this symbol of wealth in a lot of ways. Poor people wouldn't own an ox. So Jesus is saying that's fallen into a well, or your own son, your child, your flesh and blood, one of them's fallen into a well. You're going straight to that well and helping them out. Like, you're not letting them suffer in that well. So Jesus is comparing that to this guy. He's saying, look, this guy is suffering. He's in a well, a metaphorical well in his life. Would you not pull him out just because it's the Sabbath day? No, that would be ridiculous. And so Jesus is calling them out. It's a similar criticism to what he said before, where there were, I think it was either cattle or your ox was tied up to a post, and you take the tie off the post and you take it to water. And Jesus was freeing this woman from a demon which had been making her ill, and he was saying, well, surely you'd untie this woman from Satan's clutches as well. Like, if it's the same thing, but one's suffering much more, so of course you're going to help them, and you're happy to help them. So yeah, it's the comparison thing that Jesus is always doing. But the interesting thing here is that the Pharisees don't say anything. The whole time the Pharisees, whenever it's been the Sabbath, they're like really confident. They're like, all right, this is somewhere where we can call Jesus out and we can criticize him. Because everyone who's Jewish knows the Sabbath. They all know you're not allowed to work on the Sabbath. They all know to obey the Sabbath. It's written in the Old Testament. It's in Genesis. It's all this stuff. We've got all this backing for saying that they shouldn't work on the Sabbath. So we can call Jesus out confidently when he's healing on the Sabbath, when he's doing things on the Sabbath. We can criticize him for that. They're very confident in that argument. But as Jesus has done it each time, you've seen sort of their confidence chipped away more. They've lost their footing in this argument to the point now where they say nothing. They've got no comeback for him. They've got nothing to say to Jesus because he's undermined them each time and he's proven them wrong each time. And he's shown the people why their teachings are wrong so many times now that they now say nothing. But my notes say something really interesting about that. They say, by now the Pharisees have learnt that they can never win when they get into an argument with Jesus. They cannot reply emphasizes Jesus' mastery in debate. He has silenced all the Pharisees' objections, and yet they will not believe in him or follow him. Jesus has proven them wrong. He's shown them that they were wrong, to the point where they have nothing left to say. They've got no foot left to stand on. They've got no argument left. And yet they won't follow him. They don't believe in him still. And this is one of the things that Jesus talks about a lot. He talks about how there are people with hard hearts, people who just won't turn to the kingdom. And he laments for these people. He says it's so sad these people won't. He says it many times, even in yesterday's passage, where he says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing." You were not willing. Jesus is saying, look, I'm trying to help you, but you're not willing. And this is a classic example of that, where Jesus proves to the Pharisees his point. And yet their hearts are still so hard that they can't accept him and they can't turn to him. And it's a warning against, for the rest of us. It's saying, look, be humble enough to admit when you're wrong. And when, God shows you that you're wrong and God shows you how you should be living, be gracious and be nice about that and treat that as an opportunity and a learning experience, and then don't just harden yourself off like the Pharisees do. Like, beyond all the bad things they did, beyond all the corruption, all the teachings that they added in, the real problem with the Pharisees is exactly this point. It's that their hearts were too hard to accept Jesus. It wasn't that they were teaching bad teachings, it wasn't that they were doing unethical things. There are plenty of people in the Bible who were doing that. But then God steps in and God says, will you follow me? And those people turn and follow him. The biggest problem that the Pharisees have is, even though they get proven wrong, even though they get concrete evidence that Jesus is the Son of God, and he does all these things in front of them, and he gives them all these teachings and he undermines them, their hearts are still hard. And that's the key part here. It isn't about your actions, it isn't about what you do, it's where your heart is. And these Pharisees still have hard hearts. So yeah, make sure your heart's not hard. And if it is, you know, welcome God in and start to chip away at that. Start to pray for that to sort of be broken down. Because the last thing you want is to have a heart that's hardened against God. It makes everything very, very difficult, I promise. But yeah, that is today's reading. Really great little passage. Really great way to close off the teachings on the Sabbath, to have Jesus come out victorious over these Pharisees and have them just silent with nothing left to say. It's really good, really impactful. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful whatever day it is tomorrow. And yeah, I will see you all tomorrow. Much love. Bye bye bye.